Good evening. Welcome back to Dissectus, One Step Beyond. Tonight we dive beneath the sea in the last days of a war. Episode 17 is called The Haunted U-Boat and takes place in the final days of the Third Reich. A high-ranking Nazi and self-professed confidant of the Fuhrer, Erich Bachmann, boards U-Boat 147 and is given control of the vessel by its commander. Bachmann intends to use the U-boat to protect the last hopes of the Third Reich. As U-Boat 147 attempts to carry Bachmann to safety, the ship must evade airstrikes, enemy sonar, and depth charges from Allied forces. So the command is given to dive. As they descend, a mysterious banging noise begins, and the commander fears it's one of his crewmen drowning outside the hull. But the vicious Bachmann will not allow the boat to surface. The continuance of the Nazi dream is more important than the life of a single man. The concept of submarines and underwater combat is not new. In fact, it can be traced into antiquity. According to Aristotle, Alexander the Great used divers at the Siege of Tyre, and he may have even used a primitive diving bell, as seen in this 16th century painting. By the beginning of the 20th century, submarines had become viable war machines for several countries, including Britain, the US, and Germany, who would create the formidable undersea boot, or U-boot. By 1914 and the start of World War I, Germany had 48 submarines of 13 classes in service or under construction. U-boat production would continue throughout World War II. In our episode, the self-absorbed Bachmann grows increasingly edgy inside the claustrophobic confines of the U-boat. He admits he's never been inside one before and even asks if he can smoke while on board. He's instructed by one of the ship's men that he cannot because of the flammable gases for the ship's batteries, which brings us to one of the strangest U-boat stories of all, and it's real. UB-65 was a Type 3 U-boat of the Imperial German Navy during World War I. It was commissioned on August 18, 1917, under the command of Captain Lieutenant Martin Schell. During her service, UB-65 was a deadly weapon that sank a British sloop, 6 merchant ships, and damaged at least 6 more. But she was also deadly to her own crew, even while she was being built. The first death occurred when a metal girder slipped from a crane as it was being lowered into position, instantly killing a workman and injuring another who would die a few days later in the hospital. A second tragedy would occur when poisonous fumes from the submarine's dry cell batteries took the lives of 3 more workers in the engine room. Inquiries into both events could show no logical reason for the accidents. UB-65 had already killed 5 men, and she had not even been launched. But the deaths would continue. When UB-65 was on her first trial run, one of the crew members was swept overboard while he inspected the hatches and drowned. Then, during the first test dive, a rupture occurred in a ballast tank, causing the submarine to sink into the seabed. The boat and crew were stranded for 12 hours while they frantically tried to fix the vessel. During this horrifying ordeal on the seafloor, water seeped into the batteries, and again, toxic fumes spread among the crew and made everyone on board ill. Miraculously, UB-65 began to rise from the seabed and finally managed to surface. The gasping men and crippled vessel returned to port for repairs, and 2 of the crewmen would soon die in a hospital from exposure to the fumes. The word was beginning to get around that UB-65 was cursed. After several days of repairs, 65 was again ready for sea and her first patrol. But as a battery of torpedoes was being placed on board, a warhead suddenly exploded, killing the second officer and badly wounding several others. Yet again, an inquiry was conducted, but no reason for the explosion was ever found. So the second officer was buried, another round of repairs was made. Back on the haunted U-Boat 147, Bachmann is becoming more and more paranoid about the source of the incessant and seemingly impossible knocking sound. He suspects that someone in the crew is intentionally trying to drive him mad and prevent him from carrying out his mission. He demands they surface and examine the outside of the ship, even though it puts the U-boat in danger of being attacked. Once again, No reason for the sound can be found, and the U-boat is forced to dive, only for the mysterious sound to return and further torture Eric Bachman. After the death of the second officer on the real haunted UB-65, two different crewmen reported seeing the ghost. One said he had seen the ghost walking up the gangplank onto the deck, where it stood with his arms folded, staring back at him. UB-65's commander would not entertain the thought of a ghost aboard his ship and took the boat onto its first mission, where they sunk 3 merchant ships. However, the ghost sailor was still in the minds of the crew, including after the U-boat's second kill, when the ghost was witnessed in the engine room as if he were manning his station. Between 1915 and 1918, the ghost officer appeared many times. Some crew members deserted out of fear, and at least one sailor was said to have gone crazy and ran into the control room in such hysteria that he had to be forcefully sedated. Supposedly, as soon as the terrified sailor was able to make his way to the deck, he jumped overboard to his death. The hauntings and tragedies surrounding UB-65 became so well known that a Lutheran priest was brought aboard to conduct an exorcism. The paranormal activity never completely stopped, but the German Navy needed the boat in action, so the crew continued on as best they could, even through desertions and further self-harm. Finally, in July 1918, UB-65 and her crew met their deadly fate together. American naval records show that a U.S. sub had sighted the UB on the coast of Ireland, listing badly. Before the American crew could torpedo the enemy ship, they watched the ship suddenly explode mysteriously in front of them. No survivors were ever found. In 2004, underwater archaeological teams confirmed the discovery of the wreck of UB-65 off Ireland. Curiously, no particular weapon damage to the boat could be found that would have sunk the U-boat. However, aft hatches were open that indicated that some of the crew had attempted to escape from whatever took the UB-65 down. 34 men had been lost forever. The crew of our haunted U-boat await a different fate, however. A few days after the death of Hitler, a ceasefire message was sent to all U-boat commanders. 64 were at sea at that time, and 56 of them surrendered in Allied or neutral ports. To find out what happens to Bachman and the crew and the source of the mysterious noise, you'll have to watch the episode. Click the icon above or wait for the link at the end. As always, let us know what you think in the comments below, and thank you for watching Dissectus, One Step Beyond. I'm Micheal Parker. Good night.